Hello, everyone. I'm John Adib. I'm software engineer working in industry for, I would say, 17 plus years in a couple of different tech stack, different kind of companies. And I'm here to share my experience with the AI with last project, which I did in a company in production. And we're going to speak about how I build an enterprise dashboard with AI from architecture and every decision to production and deploy that with the entire user management, the authentication, the RBAC, and everything in production. So we're going to cover, first of all, the challenge that we faced and how we use the power of the AI to develop this using multiple agents and multiple different AIs. Also, architecture decision, because it was a project from scratch, so you need to build the entire project, everything, and also the tech stack side of that. After that, we're going to speak about authentication system. What does it mean, each of these words? And we're going to speak about takeaway at the end about what we take from these, everything that we discuss about. So first of all, let's speak about requirement, what we want to do. So the requirement was we want a full user management system panel, which be able to provide multiple auth methods. And it should have role-based access control, and also it should be enterprise ready for a company which already operating and having lots of live customers. Because everything from here was built with the AI, so literally there wasn't any single line of the code. I built everything just with chatting with the AI and asking agent to do the things. So the governance was very important. When we're speaking about governance, we're speaking about a lint rule that we can apply and the guardrail that we can have for code base that we have. And also the decision that we need to make, because when you're building the project, you need to take a lot of tools and decide about tool A or B or C, which one, why, and you need to also document these. At the end of that, what we built was a monorepo, which means in one code base, you have the front end and back end and everything else like types and design system and everything. Also, all of the packages that we have, it's using the Next.js, the latest version, and the latest version of the React. It was responsive. It should be responsive, and dark and light theme, both of them. It should provide the passkey, so you should be able to use your fingerprint in Mac or use Windows Hello for that. It should have a magic link and also Google authentication. Plus, it needs to have a permission, role-based access with a scope, and also everything about the auth should be handled in the backend. And also we deploy that. About deployment of that, we use Cloudflare, Worker, and Devon databases for doing that. Traditionally, when I want to build something like that in past, it's going to take definitely a couple of months for me to building something like that from scratch with this quality. But what happened here is I built that in 3 days. And that was outstanding. It wasn't because of me. It was because of the power of the AI that I used and leveraged to be able to deliver this quality in this such short time. And it wasn't MVP, it was real product that you can use and also enterprise ready with lots of standard and best practices and everything that we have in the industry. So let's speak about development workflow, how I started doing that and plan for doing that. The first point was, okay, we need to take a lot of strategic decision about how I'm going to build this. So what I did, I used multiple different AI, the famous ones, Cloud, ChatGPT, and also Gemini. So I started chat with 3 of them and said, okay, I'm going to build this, and this is the requirement that I want to do. And I want to take all of the strategic decision that I want to make. And I'm going to share the answer of you with each other. So actually, it's chat of 4 different persons, 3 AI and me. So we're going to share exactly what AI said to each other. And we're going to, the problem is, okay, it's going to be some kind of chaos. How are we going to maintain this kind of chat? Because it's going to be endless. So for be able to doing that, I tried to remove every fluff from the chat and also be able to lock the decision. So if everybody agree about, okay, this is fine to do, so we lock that decision and we continue with that decision. So as a result of that, in the middle of that, somehow Gemini left because it was just not that much useful for me, to be honest. But I continue with Cloud Code and ChatGPT heavily to take all of the decision that's primarily I need to make. It was something around 20 first decision that I need to make from the framework about which tool I'm going to use, which approach I'm going to provide for doing that, everything. After it's done, I document that. I ask one of them to document that decision and summarize that. So they're creating a full, we call it RFC, which is normally we're using in industry about doing something like that. So I created the full RFC about that. And also I documented all of the ADRs, architectural decision record that we have. I put that in the code base because I would like to refer to that and ask AI to build based on that. So it was in the code base. And after that, the next step was, okay, now I need to build this. This is the requirement of the project, what I want to do. And these are the main decisions that you need to make. So you don't need to think about taking decision because I'm the one who's going to take a decision. And I did that in past with help of other AIs. So everything after that in phase 3 went to the ID of the editor that I have in my local, which normally I'm using Cursor for that. So what I did, I didn't use the Cursor feature. I used Cloud Code, which is at the moment, when we're speaking, I mean, in 2026, start of the 2026, that's the best tool that you can use for coding. And I think I spoke to lots of other engineers in different kind of companies, and lots of them agree that Cloud Code is one of the best options that you can choose at the moment. After 6 months, maybe it changed, I don't know. But at the moment, I think that's the best decision that you can make to use that. So I use that to plan. So when you're speaking with the AI about building the thing, there's 2 approaches. You're going to say, okay, do that. And the other approach is, okay, how different is Cursor from Cloud Code? Cool. I like actually asking questions in the middle of the chat so I can answer that. So Cursor is ID. So previously we're using VS Code or other kind of ID. So Cursor is ID on top of VS Code. So exactly, it's a VS Code plus some AI feature on top of that, provided by a company called Cursor. As a result of that, you have very cool and nice feature, which is using tab. So when you're writing code and you're pressing tab, it's going to do autocomplete for you. So this is super handy. On a start, you may think this is very basic and what's the benefit of that? But that's super handy and it's going to improve the speed of the coding for you a lot because you just tap, and it's guessing what you're going to do and fill it for you. And that's one of the features of the Cursor that you have. Another feature is using the agent inside of the ID, which normally you have on the side of that. You're going to ask, okay, do this for you. So the difference of the Cursor is, okay, in the Cursor, you can do literally whatever you want. And one of the good benefits of the Cursor chat is you are able to also easily share the context of the code or CLI. So when you write a code, there's error, you're just going to select that one and write and click on the add to the chat. So it's adding to the chat and you're going to continue asking, okay, fix this for me or something like that. So what's a Cloud Code? Cloud Code is a tool provided by Cloud directly. What's a Cursor? Cursor is just the ID. Cursor doesn't have AI. Actually, a few months ago, they provided a new agent from their side, but mostly what they're doing in Cloud is they are using agents from different AIs. So you can access to ChatGPT, Cloud, Gemini, or a lot of other kind of AIs inside of that. However, the problem with the Cursor is if using Cursor, you're going to reach the token very fast, especially on a project like this level, which I'm going to build hundreds of files and lots of thousand lines of the code. Cursor is going to reach the limitation very fast. And I have the pro version of the, not the basic one, the top tier of the Cursor. But the problem is I reached the limitation very fast. However, on the Cursor code, it's much more powerful. So I'm not going to deal between different kind of AI. So Cloud Code is extension. You can install an extension on the Cursor, or you can use from the CLI. So you're running that, or you're just clicking on the button and you're going to have a window and literally you can chat there and ask for everything that you want. And the difference of the Cloud Code in the Cursor is because of the limitation is much more, and you're able to use a lot more token there, and reaching the limitation is, I think it's taking, however, interesting, in just 3 days, I also hit the limit of the Cursor code, Cloud Code, but the point is sometimes I'm switching between those two to just use the time and just do some other kind of things on the Cursor. So to be honest, I used both of them, but mainly everything starting with the Cloud Code. And after that, I try to use the Cursor for a small task and bug fixes and some kind of issue that I'm going to speak about how I manage that. After this part, which use the Cloud Code to write the foundation for me, first of all, plan. So it's planned for me, okay, for doing this, you need to have, I don't know, 20 plans, 20 different phases to do that goal that you want to achieve. I went for phase by phase and I asked for, okay, do this phase for me. And after implementation, the next step is you need to review the code. You need to understand, okay, it's right. For example, I don't know, 20 files for you and a couple of hundred lines of the code. So you need to review them. So normally what I'm using is Fork, is a tool which is a tool for reviewing the Git. You can also use the Cursor internal Git, but I prefer to have external tool to be able to have more control over Git. So I'm using Fork, checking the file one by one. And if I think it's fine, I'm going to add that to a stage one by one until finish reviewing everything. If there's a problem, I'm going to copy the path of that file and send it to the Cloud Code and say, hey, you did this thing on this file and I don't like it. I think it should be like this. And I asked for change. After whatever I did and I finalized all of the change, so I create a PR, pull request in normally GitHub, for example. There's another platform, but I'm speaking about just GitHub. So in the GitHub, the tool that I'm using is a CodeRabbit. CodeRabbit is an AI tool again, which is reviewing your PR and give you a update about, do you have any kind of things that you missed? Is there any major or minor issue in the PR or something like that, which is also useful. As you see, I use the AI to build that. I manually review that, but still there is some other kind of fix I may miss. So CodeRabbit catch them and okay, bring it for me. Okay, this is the major issue that you have here because you did this. And because I understand that concept, so I just go back again and say, okay, I think this is a problem here and you need to fix this problem for me on this specific part of the code. And after that, and a couple of times and all of the changes applied, that small feature or something that I work or that phase of the working is done. So I can proceed with the next step and next step and next step. So the point is you need to pick a feature, make it as small as much as you can because review is going to be easier for you. And then you're going to push that one and then next. How you can do that, that's also needs some kind of experience about building the tools, about what should I do next. Because for doing this, you need to do a huge amount of the code and which step is exactly next. For you, if it's difficult for you, I can suggest also use AI for doing that. So ask, okay, I'm going to do this. This is a plan, but how I can build it? Give me a plan, phase by phase, one by one. What should I do one by one? And you can proceed with that. So one of the points, as I mentioned, I also using the cursor for writing the code and doing some kind of things on parallel. So mainly my main windows was cloud, which I'm asking for a feature. It's taking maybe 10 minutes to doing my prompt to doing something for me. At the same time, for different part of the project, what I did, I used the cursor chat to be able to do working parallel on different feature at the same time. This is a bit difficult. It's literally need to focus because context switching of two different tools. So you're building feature one here and feature two here. But I did that in last couple of months. I use the AI a lot and I can handle it. However, I'm not suggesting everybody to do that because the human is by default is single responsible. So you may focus on one of them. Or you may reach the limit of the cloud and you may want to switch to the cursor to be able to use another token for doing some other kind of thing. So that's also can be happen. So the problem was I have two AIs, how I can have shared knowledge between these two to be able to, okay, if I'm saying do this, it's following the best practices and whatever I want to do in the code base. So my priority in the code base, or like always in past, was separation of concern. So this is the most important principle that I try to always have that in my code base. So by doing separation of the concern, it means if I'm working, for example, on sending email for, I don't know, welcome email for somebody when they joined, my concern should be email, nothing else. I shouldn't think about the other part of that, about how data coming or something else. So for doing that, you need to have really clear module boundaries, and you should be able to isolate the side effects of the components and files that you have. So composable function is a way that you can do that. These keywords, you're able to search them and understand these concepts. So I'm not going to go too deep about the meaning of them, but what I mean by having that generally is you're able to have the single responsibility per each file that you have. And the reason is because you're developing the code base in future and you're going to maintain that with AI. So that code should be maintainable, not just one-time code that you're building that. The problem with a lot of AI tools that we have out there is people are going to start the editor or some tool or even cloud feature and saying, okay, build this for me and that's it. Doesn't matter what's the code. Doesn't matter are we able to maintain that. But for me here, it was a project which we are going to use in the company for future. So maintainability is one of the key features that we want to achieve. And for doing that, we use separation of the concern. So also we follow functional programming because the code base that we picked was TypeScript and Node.js. So functional programming is work better here. And most of the libraries and a lot of industry parts and also the other engineer can understand functional programming better instead of object-oriented. There wasn't any comment in the code. And the reason is because you should have descriptive name. You should be explicit over implicit, and you should be able to have understanding on the file name, on the function name, and on the variables instead of adding comments on top of the codes, because nobody going to read the comments. Do you allow AI to install? There's a question. Do you allow AI to install dependency? Sorry, just let me open the full question to read that. Do you allow AI to install new dependency or module, or do you make sure to specify what you want to use when prompting? Yes, as I mentioned on the start, so what I did was exactly plan for that. So when I plan, I choose what tools to use. So when I asking for doing that a specific phase of the coding, what it's doing, so it already specify, okay, this tool you need to install for doing this. However, still sometimes there may be a case that it need to add some kind of library on top of the existing one. So you need to be careful also about adding dependency, because in the TypeScript world, you're going to end up having hundreds of dependency. So as I mentioned, separating the package, and I'm going to describe it more in next slides, by using package, separating them and having the monorepo structure, I was able to maintain that and focus in one part, in one package. So I'm not installing dozens of dependency in one huge package and have everything in one place. So as a result of all of these, the AI become consistent, and I define a lot of rules. You have two options for Cursor and Cloud. So Cursor, you can put a file called Cursor rules in the root of the project, and you're able to put whatever you want there to give it as a default prompt on knowledge of the cursor for applying the code base. So what I did, I applied all of the technical decision that I want to make, like single responsibility, like a lot of other rules that I want to do in the code base. And I described them all in the Cursor rule in the code base. So Cursor already have that. The question is, okay, how Cursor can understand what Cloud doing? So there's an option in the settings of the Cursor. You're able to go and search for that. So you can activate that, and it's going to read cloud.md file, which is specified just for Cloud. But by activating that checkbox in the settings of the Cursor, Cursor is going to also always read that cloud.md file. So Cursor rule for technical rules and cloud.md for context about what I'm doing and also referencing and how to use this part of the code base. As a result, I have two AI. When I'm saying do this or do that, in any of those, they're going to follow the same rule, same pattern, and same code base and same result at the end, which is very important. The next part was about architecture. So there's lots of decisions, as I mentioned, you need to take. So I would like to have really the strong foundation about all of the decision, or DRs, decision records, that we have in the code base. So I used a format called MADR. So MADR is a markdown format for ADR, which is a standard you can search in the web, which is simply what is ADR is saying, okay, this is the context, this is the option I'm going to choose because of this, 1, 2, 3, whatever is that. So I have 72 DRs in that code base in 12 different categories, from infrastructure to backend and frontend and automation, to TypeScript, to tooling, or even naming and services, and even code quality and formatting, all of them. So I define in 12 different categories. I use the MADR format for defining them. So they're going to have the same pattern. I literally said, do not use any kind of fluff. So do not add extra description, because these DRs are for AI, not for humans to read. So it should be really be able to understand that and scan them in future if we need to develop the code base, because we're going to follow those approach and we need to know why we're doing that. For example, I'm using PNPM. So in the next in the TypeScript or Node.js, you're able to use NPM, Yarn, PNPM, and Bun, or a lot of other options. So why I choose PNPM? Because it was related to Turborepo. Why I choose Turborepo? Because it's giving me a lot of other features like caching and other parts. So I describe all of them in every single document and make them small as much as possible, and just focus on the main thing on that and say why I choose this tool. And also AI definitely can refer to them in future. And also for developer, it's easier for them to understand. So when I'm saying, for example, for validation, I'm using Zod package, why are you choosing that? And if some developer join the company and want to develop in this code base, they can literally go there and understand there was option 1, 2, 3, and we choose, for example, Zod for validation because ABC, whatever the reason was that. And we don't need to having a chaos about using multiple tools doing the same purpose in the code base. After doing that, let's speak about the tech and system architecture, how it works. So the web app that we have using Next.js, for the UI of that, to speed up the process, we used ShadCN, which is built on top of the Tailwind. So Tailwind definitely there. And I can add more detail about that. I think all of you have some basic knowledge, so I'm not going to too deep about defining the simple things unless you really want me. So send me comments if you want to go for deep. So ShadCN is a package of the library which is built on top of the Tailwind. So for example, if you want to have a button, there is a button already there. And the point about ShadCN compared to other framework is the code will be in your code base. So it's not like Bootstrap, which we use in past, which you should use this class and having that style of the button. No. It's going to create a React component in your own code base, and you're able to maintain that and do whatever you want to do. For me, because long-term plan, we should integrate also with our design system and should have the same coloring and same look everywhere. So I use ShadCN and I inject the tokens that we have in a company, which is literally one file saying, okay, the main color is this, the secondary color is that, and there is a lot of other kind of things which we call it tokens in design system. And I can be able to have all of them and have same looking on the UI. On the backend side, I have a service, or in the microservice architecture, which is just service for identity and auth, which is using Hono as a framework for backend and using BetterAuth for the authentication, and also using Drizzle ORM for the database. Also on the database side of that, I use Cloudflare D1, which is provided by Cloudflare ecosystem, which is using SQLite on the edge. So at the end of that, we deployed everything on the Cloudflare worker. We used also Cloudflare R2 for the files that we have, and also CDN. For monitoring tools, we use Sentry, which is a really famous tool. A lot of companies using that. And also we used Uptime Robot for monitoring the uptime of the system. And also for reliability and testing, I used Vitest and Storybook for the UI. About the Vitest, probably you understand or you work with the Jest. So Vitest built something on top of the Jest, but the point is there's a lot of other setup happen on Vitest, which you don't need to actually spend too much time for doing the basic things. So I'm suggesting using that instead of Jest. And Storybook is some kind of live preview for every single component that you have in your code base. So instead of how I can see this button looks like, and always that's a question because you need to run the entire project to see that. Instead of that, you're going to use a Storybook, and that Storybook is going to have multiple stories per each component that you have, and you can have different variant of that. So for example, if I have a header, and that header having a status when user logged in and when user not logged in, and even when user logged in, which permission they have. If they have more permission, we need to have more buttons there. If they have, I don't know, less permission, we should have less buttons there. So you see, just for header, we may have 5, 10 variants of different things. So in a Storybook, you're going to create multiple story for each of them. And when you're reviewing or writing a code, I'm writing code, I can see all of the 10 variables at the same time. And if something broken or something not working, I can quickly understand and fix that. Plus, I use a tool which is built also by Storybook, which is called Chromatic, which you are able to upload all of the UI in a website. So you can share that with your UX designer, and UX designer can check the code, not code actually, they can check the result of the code and the UI of the component before using them in a final result on the product. And this is very useful also. We're using the Chromatic also. About the code base. So there's two approach. You can have monorepo, which means all of the code base in one repository. Git repositories can be GitHub or any other tool. So everything in one, or you can have a polyrepo, which means you're going to have one repository for backend, one repository for frontend, and microservice 2 going to have different repository. Probably you're going to have a shared type, and we're going to create another repository for that. And at the end, you're going to end up having a couple of repositories. So for example, in my company, which I'm working at Zap at the moment, is we have something around more than 20 different repositories for doing different things. So this was the foundation of everything for UI, and we're going to move everything to this UI to have same monorepo and everything in one place. As a result of that, we have a web, which means the Next.js part of that, and we have identity, which is the backend part of that, the microservice. Plus, we have a couple of packages because we don't want to repeat ourselves. We want to put a code somewhere and reuse it in the front end and in the back end. So how we did that? We use a package. So UI package, which is just the ShadCN part of that. Design system package built on top of the UI package, and the usage of the design system is it's able to build custom component on top of the ShadCN, and we can use our token and everything that we have. Plus the AUF package, which means when we want to use this one in multiple backend and frontend and even communicating between services, how it's going to use. All of the code related to AUF went to that package. Config package means about how to reading the env in the code base and variables that we may define. Logger package for logging in the tool. So for example, we're using GCP, how I'm going to log that? How I'm going to transport this one to different places? So that package have everything around that. Utilities, and all of the utilities goes there. Email package, storage, SDK. SDK is also very important. What's the SDK? When we have API in the backend, the question is, where is the URL of this API? How I now in the front end, where is the UI of this specific API? I don't know that. So most of the time, you're going to write that in the front end, but the point is there's no connection of that one in the front end and back end. So using the SDK package, or you may call it something else, some of the others may call it client or something like that. So SDK package going to have the URL of the API, going to have the request of the API and response of the API. And all of them at the same time, you are able to also have the function to call that. So if you want to communicate between front-end and back-end, and you're able to call the API, you're going to use the SDK package for doing that. Plus all of the TypeScript config and the payment. After all of those, we used TurboRepo, which giving us a feature like parallel build and also the caching part. These are the really important feature and useful. And because of that, it's really have good integration with PNPM. These two together, also creating one command to run everything for us, like lint, type checking and build and everything. And plus the cache, it means they're going to run faster, much faster. So I think a lot of engineers underestimate the TurboRepo power. It's going to add a lot of speed in development experience that you're going to have. On the front-end side, so we use Next.js as a framework, which is famous in the industry, and we use SSR and some other kind of feature that we have in the Next.js. Also, as I mentioned, ShadCN, Tailwind. For the animation, we used Motion. It should be responsive and mobile-friendly, and also it should support light mode and dark mode, both of them at the same time, which happen with ShadCN automatically, actually. So as a pattern of everything together, also we use some kind of routing group feature, which is very useful, server actions, and a lot of other feature that we have in the Next.js. On the backend side of that, we used Hono. Hono is famous because of the backed by Cloudflare, and it's using, at the moment, last time I checked, it's something around 10 million weekly download, which is a lot, and it means the user is going to use that, and it's super small, fast, and it's known for running on the edge, which is, as I mentioned at the start, we deploy everything on Cloudflare Worker. So we are able to deploy that in one code base and one UI, and we are able to use the power of the Cloudflare Worker. However, you may deploy this one in some other infrastructure like AWS Lambda or GCP Cloud Run or Vercel or something else. On the cloud platform, on the cloud platform, when we're speaking about Cloudflare, so Worker for code for front-end and back-end. Also for database, we used D1 database, and for storage and file, we used R2 storage, which is based on the S3 standard in the web. So it's super handy, all of them at the same time. They are all on the edge, which means users from different locations, when they hit that, they're going to access that in the fastest way, and it's super fast. The point is, if I want to, so we are using GCP for infrastructure. If I want to build this thing, one front end, one backend, and deploy that on 4 different staging. So we have development staging and production. So 3 different plus the local. So we have 3 on the cloud, plus each of them having database and the front end and backend. So if I want to deploy this on the GCP, I need to pay a couple of $100 per month for a couple of $100 per month for just hosting these on the GCP. GCP is not cheap, it's literally expensive, and having that is a minimum that I'm saying on the GCP. However, on the Worker, and with the D1 and the R2, everything, it was free, literally free for me, because I have 6 workers, 3 front-end, 3 back-end, and also 3 D1 databases, and 3 also storage. It's based on the usage. You need to pay, but compared to traditional way of the deploying, is much more cost efficient, especially for if you want to run something and build and experience that one. And also the power of the edge, you don't have that on the traditional deployments. And I need to just mention that almost 20% of the internet using Cloudflare. So definitely this is something which also for us, we use that in the company. So that was also something good, that we use the same tool that we're using, and I didn't introduce the new tools in the company. For the AUth and authentication, we used BetterAuth. It's self-hosted solution which you are able to provide a lot of other things. So what does it mean? So I'm able to use passkey, which means I'm using my fingerprint to log in, or Windows Hello, or if you have a mobile devices, you are able to just, like in iPhone, you are able to just scan your face and log into the platform. It's have a magic link. It means it's going to send a link to the user going to click on the link, and they are logged in. So it's called Magic Link, which is fine, and we need that for some users. It's have a Google Auth, which means there's a button to log in with Google, and when the user press, they're going to just choose the Google and they're going to log in. So as I mentioned, this is for companies. So we limited this one to company's email address. So if they are using the domain, which is just for us, they are able to log in. If you try to log in, it's going to show error to you. It's also giving me the user management and also multi-session per each users, and also the API key because of the MCP server that we may introduce in future. All of them happen in BetterAuth. And we can have some option like Clerk, which is really nice option. But the point is, we're going to have a vendor log, and using the authentication, which is one of the basic things, using separate tool, which normally we try to do not log ourselves like this situation for something this much foundational and critical for business. So for passkey, we spoke about that. You have all of the option in every devices. It's also latest secure way that you can do, and also handy because even you don't need to go to the Google. A couple of months ago, with one of the tools, we used Firebase Auth. So Firebase Auth was down for a couple of hours, and none of our customers could log into that tool because of the Firebase Auth was down. So using some self-hosted authentication like this, giving you access to, okay, you can tap, and you're able to just go in and you can use the tool, whatever is that. So everything hosted on your own tool, no concern. Magic Link, we spoke about that. It's, as I mentioned, external user that we may have. So we're using that one. They click on the link, they log in, they can press it. They just have minimum access to that. For email sending also, I used Resend, which is a developer-friendly email service that you can use. Simply, you can integrate that. For the user, also, we need to have one of the basic and main requirement that we had was, okay, how are we going to manage the access of the users? So at the moment, there was multiple tools, each of them some kind of chaos. Everybody was admin on all of the tools. And how are we going to maintain that? So we introduced using RBAC, stand for Role-Based Access Control. Also, we need to have a scope because the business that I am is e-commerce, and we have some global users, some of them in the HQ and some of them also in the FCs, which is operating. So it needs to have different scope for each of them and also having a role-based. So combination of these two, scope and RBAC, give us really powerful way to manage users and be able to handle them, which we define more than 10 RBAC in our system, just let you know. And for database, we use Drizzle ORM. We have another option like Prisma, but we don't want to involve ourselves with the CodeGen part of that and others. So Drizzle is quite handy, one of the developer-friendly ORMs that you can use in the JavaScript and TypeScript. So also I'm suggesting never try to query directly. Always try to use ORMs. And there's a couple of options. You may choose another one. One of the handy and nice feature that we had there was auto migration. So it's handling all of the migration for us, and we don't need to concern about the migration. And also it's TypeScript 100% safe. So it's also very useful and handy. For deployment, we use GitHub Action Pipeline to build, lint, test, and deploy everything on the cloud. As I mentioned, 4 environments, 3 of them on the cloud, and the CI running everything because we use Biomeat as a tool for linting, which was much, much faster compared to ESLint and Prettier. That's happening, all of the lint part happened less than a minute. So CI literally take 1 minute. So you creating a PR after a minute, you're going to see a green tick, or you're going to see it's failed for some reason and you need to fix it. About animation, so we want to have a really nice looking app for users. It's already nice in the current tools that we have, but we want to make it much, much nicer. So what I did, I used Motion, which is a library for animating elements in the JavaScript. And also I use Lottie a lot. So Lottie is an animation that you can add to a project. So having some kind of fancy animation in the UI, like empty state or something like data not exist or something like that. So Lottie also the motion for animation, and also I use the Gemini Banana to generate a video for us. So in the home page, I describe the concept of the business for Gemini, and I ask, okay, generate a video for me. So when user hit the URL to see first time, there's going to be a UI and there's a video there which is creating that, and it's just looking nicer for user and they can have better experience on the UI. At the end, we spoke about everything, all of these, and they built in 3 days. Day 1 was foundation. Everything about foundation, about monorepo, about TypeScript and linting, and all of the initial decision record that need to be captured. Day 2 was mainly for the backend side of that. Identity service with the Hono, the better out, the migration of the database, and defining the roles also. And day 3 was for the UI part, which was all of the ChatCM part of that, the design system, also the pipeline, and all of the polishing at the end. And to be honest, I spent a couple of hours even just for Motion to animate the homepage and make it cool. The lesson that we learned here after all of these was, first of all, always plan, always document as much as you can, especially in the world of AI. They're going to read that. And the reason is when you have more documentation in the code base, the AI is going to read them faster because AI is going to follow the pattern. If your code base are guardrailed and defined well, they're going to follow that approach. If it's open for them to do whatever they want, they're going to easily create chaos for you. So for example, I limited my functions to do not have more than, I think, 100 lines of the code, for example. So they should extract the function to multiple files to be able to limit the functionality of one and having a single responsibility. It means one file and one function should do one thing. That's it, very simple. And these together help us a lot. Plus, when you proceed with the project, you can ask Cloud to go scan this folder and create cloud.md file for all of the important, like for every package, I have one cloud.md in that package. The reason is saving tokens. So instead of just wasting lots of tokens to go scan the entire code base, it's going to read its own file, cloud.md, and it's going to use that one for generating code for you. About the tech stack, so as I mentioned, it's an enterprise company. I need to answer about every single decision that I made. So there is nothing fancy. It's actually boring tech stack, but the point is they are enterprise ready, and they are able to be stable for a couple of hours, couple of years, and they are being to be able to stable for a couple of years, and nobody need to worry about this tech stack. So I didn't went for any kind of fancy tool or fancy decision here, and everything was the famous libraries and tools and way of publishing and also deployment and everything. About the ALF, as I mentioned, we have some cool option like Cleric, but we don't want to lock ourselves with some kind of foundational feature like authentication with external tool. So we use BetterAlf, and it was mainly just one day for doing that, which was fine and acceptable. And you need to understand when using some kind of external tool, yes, for a startup, you may use that for just build the tool, but for longer term, you need to pay per user, and that's something that you need to consider on the start. Everything deployed on the Cloudflare Worker, which is called edge-first architecture. So you're going to deploy on multiple servers instead of traditional way of deployment. So Hono give us this ability to be able to do that. And also we invested a lot in developer experience to be able to give our developer to code faster and safer. So Storybook, Chromatic, VTest, and all of the TypeScript feature was there to be able to give us that. At the end, reviewing everything together, 3 days of development, 72 decision record happened, and more than 10 packages, fully functional integrated ALF package, and it's also in use. And thank you so much. Also, I need to add these slides, whatever you saw, created by Cloud Cowork. So for me, building something like that, taking a couple of days probably, but it's built everything by Cloud Code. Thank you so much. You can link with me on the LinkedIn, Mr. Radib. You can search for that, and we can connect for future. If there is any question, we can answer. No worries. Cool. Wish you success, guys. Bye.